This episode is dedicated to the memory of William Russell, better known to his friends and colleagues as Russell Enoch. G'day audiophiles, this is the Sirens of Audio, the show that explores the universe of Doctor Who and the audio medium. I'm Dwayne.
And I'm Philip. G'day, Dwayne. G'day, audiophiles.
G'day Philip, how have you recovered from our 200th episode with Fraser Hines?
I've recovered well, but it's not ending because the party continues. Because our
Well,
one
we got
today
to
is
the,
going
we
to
got
be
to 200 and now we got to
kicking off the
a new
next
beginning.
200.
Yeah,
And the
that's right.
New beginning's a big new beginning.
Yes, with the original beginning, shall we say. Our special guest for this episode is the one and only Carole Ann Ford. So very exciting, Philip.
Carole Ann Ford with her first podcast ever. So
Yeah, what a privilege. Yeah, very chuffed about that.
we are very privileged to have Carole Ann coming on her first ever podcast with us. We're so humbled. I'm humbled.
Yeah. So even though we've done a couple of hundred episodes now, there's no sign of us stopping anytime soon, I don't think, Philip. So I better keep my editing software up to date because we've got a long way to go. The Big Finish has got their license until 2030, haven't they? Or 2029 or something? I don't
Oh, that sounds exhausting, but okay.
know. So not only is this a special occasion for us, but we also have some upcoming events that, Philip, I would love you to talk about.
Well, you would have heard about them already last week. In the 200th episode, we decided to announce it with Fraser. But just a reminder, we have Fraser Hines coming out to Australia, and he's doing 3 events for us. So he'll be in Sydney, and then Melbourne, and then Brisbane. And then we have the wonderful and lovely Katie Manning joining us again, and she'll be joining Fraser in Brisbane. So all you people in Brisbane who've been complaining about the fact you haven't had anyone for a while, you've got to get Katie and Fraser together. You guys are so blessed.
Absolutely.
In fact, Fraser's birthday is going to be up in Brisbane, and so we'll celebrate his birthday. Last year we celebrated Katie's birthday in Sydney. This year we're celebrating Fraser's birthday in Brisbane. And then Fraser unfortunately has to depart and head back, but in lucky Tasmania is going to get Katie Manning for I think the first time she's ever done a convention down there. She's done lots of touring.
Second time.
Oh,
Second
second
time,
time.
but I think it's the first time since 1985 was the last time she was in
Well, most
Launceston, I
of the people
believe.
down there wouldn't have been born by that stage then. And so Katie Manning. So every weekend in September is an opportunity to see a Doctor Who person. So make sure you get
I
your
feel
tickets
tired
soon.
already.
Oh, I know. It's going to be fantastic. So I'm organising all my leave at the moment.
No, I'm very excited because it's always good to get something for Tasmania, and to be doing events and to have Katie in both Launceston and Hobart is very, very exciting for me in particular, because finally I don't have to travel too far to go to an event in
Well, that's
Launceston.
right. Well, if it goes well and numbers go well, we will repeat Launceston and Hobart again soon. If the numbers don't go well, we'll go to Adelaide or we'll go to Perth. And we might try and do those things anyway. So yeah, people in
Yeah.
Hobart and Tassie, you better get and Brisbane, guys, get your tickets because we have more planned.
Every time you announce something, have you noticed the outer cities always scream for, please Perth, please
Well,
Adelaide,
then they need to
come to
buy their
Launceston.
tickets. They need to get their tickets.
It's the only way to
Um,
do it.
it's the only way to do it. So yeah, guys, get your tickets, and we'll keep bringing people because we just need to know that the tickets sell. Because we're going to bring people out, they need to have an audience, and so we're really keen to get some big audiences for Fraser, for Katie, and for the future because there's more to come.
Excellent. All right. So we're going to talk to Carole Ann Ford in a moment. But Philip, before we do you know what?
What, Dwayne?
I'll go on. Say it. It's
Yeah,
episode 201. You say it.
it's time to go down the rabbit hole.
Thank you, Philip. And since you were so good at announcing where we were actually going, I thought I'd make this one of those occasions where you hit me with the rabbit hole topic because I
Oh,
haven't thought of one.
you ratbag. Well, anyhow, well, I'll do that because I have been thinking about it.
Oh,
Um,
good.
in the interview, we're going to in with Carole Ann Ford, we're going to talk a bit about her Big Finish work, and we're going to talk about the fact that actually Susan is in three different parts. So in part when she first appears, we she started off in the Unbound series with Jeffrey Bolden, and those two stories she did with Jeffrey are fantastic. Two or three, I think it's
It
two,
was two with Jeffrey
two,
Balden, yeah.
two with Jeffrey Bolden, which are amazing stories. So there's that Susan. Then she goes to Companion Chronicles and and some lost stories, and we get young Susan. But then she returns later on to get to work with Paul McGann as the Susan who's been left behind. And in fact, we actually have a whole story of her after the Daleks. Um, what are the stories of Big Finish with Susan that you like the best and why?
Well, I really love Old Mortality because I remember the excitement at the time of Carole Ann Ford coming to Big Finish for the first time. I love Jeffrey Balden. I've always loved him as Cat Weasel. I love him in Creature from the Pit. He, to me, that I know Big Finish at the time always said that that particular Unbound Doctor was not the actual first Doctor, whereas in my mind it always was the first Doctor who never left Gallifrey.
Mm.
But Big Finish have always said that no, it is a different first Doctor. I don't know how that works, but anyway. So I enjoyed that story very much. I really like the interaction she has with the Eighth Doctor. There's that real sense of grandfather granddaughter that they managed to capture between those
Mm.
two, and I love that whenever they get together. So it's been on a few different occasions now. I think the most recent one was for Once and Future, wasn't it? Where she was there with the Eighth Doctor in the last one, which was called I can't remember what it was called. I should know.
Is that the Union one?
The Union,
Yeah, the
the Union.
Union.
That's right. Yeah. So that was really nice. Um, yeah, and the ones where the Lucy in the midst of the Lucy Miller series were good too, but I always have a really soft spot for the early adventures, and it was Lisa Bauman that directed many of those, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And particularly the early adventures with Carol Ann and William Russell got one or two in there.
Yep.
Maybe a couple more than that. I have a real soft spot for those. Always loved the early adventures. I was sad when they finished that range up. I don't know whether it was because they felt the range was tight or it wasn't selling. I don't know. They were always top-notch quality, those stories. So,
I think sometimes just
uh,
they just haven't got time to do everything. I think when they recasted the first Doctor, that was the choice was to go for recast the first Doctor.
yeah. So I think I love them all, but my sentimental favorite would have to be the early adventures. I love those.
There
Mm.
you go.
What about you? You got a
Um,
favorite era?
well, I mean, I love the Companion Chronicles, you know that, but um, to me, yeah, the Paul McGann stories are just so emotionally powerful, and her with a son and her grandfather, and well, sort of, I mean, they've got a lovely Christmas show together, which is just beautiful, but it just gets very dark, and it Susan gets to go to some very dark places because of what happens because of the Daleks and Lucy and her son, and it's very powerful performances. I'm going to call out a short trips though, because I don't usually call out short trips. Um,
I was going to say that's usually my jam.
that's usually your area, but there's a short trip called All Hands on Deck,
Yep.
which is a really bleak story where it's basically the Time War's coming, and the Time Lords are going around collecting all Time Lords. And so Susan's there, and they go to Susan, and they recall Susan back to Gallifrey, and the Eighth Doctor's there trying to stop her and saying, "No, don't go. Don't get involved with the war." But she feels duty bound to go back to her planet, and it's a really amazing short trip.
And of course, it was the
Yeah,
prologue to Susan's War, wasn't it?
and then it's kind of the prologue into the box set of Susan's War, and Susan's War is the Time Lord sending her on missions, and all of them have a connection to her first season, with the first season.
Yes.
So it's a beautiful show with Sense Rise with William Russell, and and a lovely scene with William Russell in the house, and the front door, the key goes in the lock of the front door, and it opens, and you know it's Barbara. The show ends before she speaks, but it's Barbara coming home, and it's just Ian and Barbara living together. It's just such a
Oh, I'd
beautiful little
forgotten
moment.
about that. I remember it now. It was
Oh,
fantastic.
that moment just
Yep.
warms me heart. And those stories in that Susan Fox set are really lovely stories. I keep hoping they'll do another one. But it's Susan during the Time War, and she's still a bit naive because I don't think she understands. Well, actually, she does know there's manipulation happening there, but she's still seeking to do good. And so it's her trying to do good, and she's doing what the Eighth Doctor's trying to do in the Time War as well, which is
Mm.
maintain integrity as everything collapses around you. It's a really great box set. Yeah, I love what they've done with her character, and yeah, I don't think she can complain about how they brought Susan back and what they do with her.
Mm. Here's a question for you. Do you think, with all the Susan twists in the later series, do you think she's coming back in any shape or form?
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. In fact, by the time this comes out, we might know definitely one way or the other. See if there's
Could
any
do.
clue. See if there's any clues in the interview that we're about to give, whether you think she's coming back or not.
There could be. You never know. All right, let's jump on up out of this rabbit hole. And shall we throw in a trailer for Old Mortality, the first
That's
Big Finish audio that Carole Ann appeared in for Big Finish? And we'll get to our chat with her straight after that.
sounds great.
Old mortality.
Never heard of him.
And what story are you engaged in at the moment?
Old man!
And who are you calling old, sir?
Ours, these mountains. No one crosses them.
Indeed.
Not just an excuse to live out your fantasies.
Those that do pay with their lives.
Oh, you want to fight, do you? Well, you can play at that game. I'm studying an event from the antiquity of the planet Earth.
Honored members of the Supreme Council, Cardinals, Time Lords.
You still wasting time with that primitive backwater?
At least Earth has an ongoing history.
I'll feed you to the dogs, bit by bit.
Now, just a minute.
Die, old man.
Everything stopped here centuries ago.
It need not have done.
I stand before you and offer myself to the highest and humblest duty.
So many paths to choose.
I pledge myself to the stewardship of time until death shall overtake me.
So many possibilities. So many.
What is this? We're outside the Panopticon at the capital. Whose investiture is this?
The president of the Supreme Council of Time Lords. Who do you think?
Don't push your luck, Doctor. Or when we get to Rome, Surus will use you as shot with a catapult.
Who is writing this story anyway, you or me?
Over the last 61 years of Doctor Who, there have been three things that have been constant: the Doctor, the TARDIS, and his companion. And his first ever companion is joining us today, Carole Ann Ford. Thank you so much for
Hi.
joining us. Can you believe 61 years after starting Doctor Who, you are still doing interviews about that program?
It's ridiculous, isn't it? I know, but if one had said at the time this is going to happen, I said, don't be so crazy.
So I'd love to kick off earlier than that. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and growing up and your family, and why did you become an actress?
Now I have to think about my childhood, not just 60 years ago. Yeah, I think I was. I no, I was going to say I think I was a fairly normal kid. I wasn't a fairly normal kid. I was very strange. um, oh, I used to absolutely adore going to dance classes, which I went to from the age of 3. Um, and theatre was very, very much in my, I wouldn't say in my blood because that suggests that my family were theatre people. They weren't. But I don't really know why I wanted to act, but I always did. And I didn't just want to act, I wanted to organize other people, anybody around me, into acting as well. People were always having to be part of my dramas. I would create dramas, and anybody who was near me was dragged into them willy-nilly. So kicking and screaming usually. I remember we were in a block of flats. My parents had a flat And in the flat beneath theirs, there was this unfortunate girl who was about a year or two younger than me. And I was always demanding that she appear in my productions, and she wasn't always willing. Nobody was willing. I had to drag them and shake them to do it. But I couldn't understand it because I loved doing it, everything about it. But other people said, "Oh, yeah."
Now, long before you appeared in Doctor Who, you have a huge repertoire in terms of plays and shows and things. So when did you first go professional, and how did that happen?
Well, you won't believe me. I was 8. First film I did was 8 years old.
Wow.
Hmm. And I loved it and thought it was simply wonderful. That was my first injection of it. And from that, I was hooked, definitely. The whole thing, I loved the whole thing about being on a film set. And I even loved all the instructions, I still do, loved all the instructions they were giving to all the mechanical people, all the behind scenes people, all the things leading up to the clapperboard coming down. It was just magic, magic.
So are there particular pieces of work you remember that you did in the early days?
Well, I absolutely adored Espresso Bongo, which was a musical. It was a mad musical. I don't know why more isn't made of it because I think there was some great music, but it was revolutionary music. It wasn't like the musicals of the day, which tended to be sort of quite romantic things. Actually, that's absolute nonsense. I'm talking. Shut me up right now, because while at the same time as I was doing Espresso Bongo was West Side Story and Charlie's Aunt. Well, Charlie's Aunt was more the sort of stuff I had in mind, but West Side Story, wow. And
Yeah.
it was absolutely fantastic because uh, the West Side Story was in the Saville Theatre, which no longer exists, unhappily, but the Saville Theatre was right in the middle of the West End. And opposite was a coffee bar, which also doesn't exist. But this man, the man who ran it, was a great fan of everything theatrical, and he used to keep it open for us after our shows. When I say us, I mean we who were in Espresso Bongo and those who were in West Side Story. So the two companies used to connect after the shows and go and have coffee and whatever afterwards. And we used to, nobody else, just us. He just opened it for us. And we would dance away. We would share our routines with each other. They would show us their routines. We would show us theirs. And we'd finish up dancing on the tables. And luckily, he loved it. The guy who ran it, he loved it all. So we were very fortunate to have that, because it takes a long time to wind down after you've been doing a show, especially a musical. I mean, the adrenaline's just going pop, pop, pop. And you just have to do something afterwards, which is why actors usually stay up very late doing all sorts of things. And this was a wonderful thing to do. Although, mind you, we drank gallons of coffee, which probably added to the adrenaline. So after the poor man finally said, "I'm sorry, I've got to go to bed," and closed up the place, we go onto the streets, linking arms, dancing down the streets. I mean, it was like our own little Hollywood musical come true. It was very, very happy times for me, very happy times. And I couldn't get enough of it. I mean, literally, I wasn't that popular in the company because of my enthusiasm. I mean, the director was very often very good man. He used to go and make sure that it was up to the top standard it could be. And sometimes he'd come in afterwards and say, sorry, kids, but I'd like to call some rehearsals. There's one or two bits you're getting slack in. And I go, hooray! I just couldn't get enough of it. And everybody just went,
So how old would have been then?
16.
Right. So all your formal education was really done on the stage.
My formal education. There wasn't much education going on. There was all sorts of education going on, but there wasn't much formal education.
Now, London during the 60s is sort of was the world center of culture, was the world center of entertainment. So what was it like in those years?
It was fizzy poppingly fantastic. It really was. It was, I mean, quite often it happens in your life. There's a period like that, and you say, actually, I didn't realize that it was going on. Everybody else tells me it was like that, but oh, we realized how lucky we were, and we enjoyed every moment of it. It was, I mean, in the fashion world, the theatre world, cinematic world, you know, every aspect of life was just zapping away there, and I loved every minute of it, and I appreciated every minute of it, especially the clothes. Oh my God, yes. It was a wonderful time to be a teenager in.
How did you end up auditioning for Doctor Who? How did that part come about?
Well, I was in another television series, um, and it was directed by Rex Tucker. And I don't know if Rex Tucker means anything to you. You're nodding your head, aren't you? I'm looking in that direction because there he is on my screen.
We're sad Doctor Who fans. We are.
Well, then you know that Rex Tucker was originally going to be either directing or producing Doctor Who. I can't remember which in particular. Anyway, he was directing this particular thing that I was in. And he was still in touch with Waris Hussein and Verity Lambert, and they were telling him what was going on in Doctor Who, and they were having great difficulty casting Susan. I don't know why, but they were. And anyway, he thought that I would be a possible candidate, so he suggested they come and have a look at me. And they did while I was actually doing it. I didn't know, of course, nobody told me. They were up in the control booth and they're looking at the monitors, and they could see I wasn't acting when they saw me. I was actually just, I was in between doing acting bits. And I was just wandering around, chatting away to people and probably going over my lines. I don't know. But anyway, they liked what they saw and they wanted to see me. And so they asked me to come and have a chat with them, which I did. It wasn't an audition, in as much as I didn't get to reading any lines or anything like that, but just general chatting. And they told me what was going to happen. It was all lies. Never did happen. But they told me what was supposed to be happening in the show, in as much as what caught my attention was that we were going to be, with each journey we did in the TARDIS, we'd finish up somewhere different, a different time, as well as a different planet, possibly. But the time thing caught my attention because as we had to blend in with the people around us, we had to get to look and behave like them. So it was like acting a different part in every episode. It didn't quite happen like that, but the time it did happen like that actually was in the one about the French Revolution.
Mm.
I'm sure that as fans you'll know what it was called, the Reign of Terror. The Reign of Terror. That was marvelous. I thought it was terribly funny actually because just by coincidence, we happened within the program, we happened to come across this great big chest full of clothes of the period, which just happened to fit us beautifully. I think it was wonderful, and that was what it was all about for me. Dressing up. I mean, that's what actors do, isn't it? They stay kids all their life, and they dress up in all sorts of strange clothes sometimes, sometimes not. But it's just being different people, becoming different people. And so we had to become the people who were in that period so we didn't get funny questions asked.
Did you prefer theatre to television? Which medium did you prefer?
Theatre is my first love and my abiding love. You can't compare it to anything else. I mean, there's a sort of kinship between the cinema and television, but theatre is something totally different and creates a totally different feeling while you're doing it, while you're rehearsing it, at every stage of it. It's just so it has a rush of adrenaline like nothing else. It's the contact with the audience. I mean, now, funnily enough, that's why one of the reasons I like conventions is because, oh, here I've got my audience, wonderful. And I love it. I love interacting with people. I love working the crowd, working the room and meeting the fans and things. It's great.
Well, I hope at some stage we'll get you out to Australia to do that.
At some stage, yes. I'm sorry about this time, but it just wasn't possible. There were things happening in my life that I had to be here for.
No, that's fine. But I'm going to keep chasing you.
I hope you don't have to chase me. don't think I'll be able to run.
Now, what was filming television like back in those days? You talked a bit about theatre and the energy there. What was a week like in television? Did television change much? I mean, I guess you did a lot of television over a lot of years. You would have seen
I
a lot
did,
of
yeah.
change. So I'm just wondering what it was like in those early days. So I was kind of thinking Doctor Who and earlier, but just in terms of just the whole process that was involved.
Well, getting the job process was different. Uh, you had to you had to be referred by a casting director to the director who was going to be directing you. It's difficult because I mean I can't compare that to what I did after Doctor Who because that was different too. But in the early days of Doctor Who, compared to the more recent ones, yeah, it was a very heavy schedule. You had your table read for the first day, and if there were any problems that you discovered in the script, you had to bring those up. And there was usually quite a lot of arguing about, oh, actually, that suited me fine, that bit. I'm sorry, but it didn't suit me. It didn't suit my character. Uh, and the writers were fairly reluctant to change what they'd written because obviously it was quite difficult to get the thing down anyway, And yeah, it was. I mean, I find the whole process very enjoyable. I can't remember ever thinking, "Oh my God, I've got to go into work today." I've always loved every minute of it. But yes, the first day was a read around the table, just getting our characters sorted and in relation to all the other characters, and the director saying, "Well, I hope you're not going to do it like that on the day because that wasn't." But no, it was all fairly amiable, I think, and getting to know the new people coming in because we regularly had visiting actors coming in,
Mm.
and I used to envy them because I thought their characters were more interesting than mine, and they had more interesting things to do. But it was all great fun.
Carol, I have only just recently, well, it's just recently been released, but a recording of your third Doctor Who serial, The Edge of Destruction, where you did
Yeah,
the linking narration for that audio release, has just been released this month. And
yeah.
I've just listened to it. And there's a little interview with you with I think it's David Darlington at the end. And you're talking about the writing of David Whittaker. Now he's
Mm.
still a bit of a mystery to lots of Doctor Who fans. There's not a lot known about him. A book has only just been released about him now. Did you have much to do with David, or was he more behind the scenes? And if so, what kind of a man was he?
He was a very quiet man, very serious about what he did. Uh, Not, I wouldn't say he was a barrel of jokes, but he was a very sweet man, very, very amiable, very concentrated on getting the good job done. And if you had any suggestions, he wouldn't just shove them off and say, "Sorry, it's written now. We can't do anything about it." He listened to what you were saying, and he was a very sweet man, very nice man.
And can you just discuss a bit how it was with William Russell, William Hartnell, and Jacqueline Hill?
Oh well, Bill Hartnell, he was absolutely adorable. I didn't understand it when later on I heard people saying bad things about him. I couldn't. I was very upset because he and I developed a really strong sort of grandfatherly, granddaughterly relationship, and we had a shared interest in horses. Mind you, mine was riding them. His was watching them racing on. In fact, that was the only time we had any bone of contention when I'd never betted on anything before ever. And I said, "Why don't I have a bet?" And he said, "Yeah, okay, fine. I'll sort it out for you." I said, "Okay." He said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know. I don't know anything about betting." So, as a joke, he said, "Why don't you do an accumulator?" I said, "What? Do you know what an accumulator is? Anybody? Either of you?"
No, I don't bet. Sorry.
Oh, there you are. Well, I'll tell you what it is. You bet on it, and it's just like 1,000,000 to 1 chance that you're gonna get something from it. So anyway, what happens is you put a bet to say that I think that in this race, these three horses will come first, second, third. In other words, you predict which horses are going to come first, second, third. And simply by going like that with a pin, ding, 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 I came up with three names, right? Well, I won it. I won a lot of money on it. These three horses did come first, second, and third in the Grand National, of all things, which is totally unpredictable anyway, but it was pure chance, no knowledge. And because Bill used to study form, he used to be very serious about it, which jockey was going to ride him, what his bloodlines were, what his form on previous races were, etc., etc. I knew nothing of that. I just put the pen in the paper and said, okay, that one. He couldn't believe it. I said, no mind, Bill, I'll buy you a drink. That's the only time he was a bit with me. How did you do this and not me?
What about Jacqueline Hill? Because she just seems like she was lovely.
Jackie Hill was an absolute sweetheart. She was a great giggler, and she was very concerned that everybody was happy and fine. She was like a mother hen, If we came in sneezing, are you all right? She had a load of things in her bag which would be okay for a sore throat, a headache, or whatever it was ailing you. She was lovely. But the thing I remember about Jackie most is that obviously we used to chat about things we'd done in the past. And she had a bad experience once or twice in one or two of the things that she'd done when she'd been coming as a visiting actor into a cast that had been doing it for some time, and they developed a group and they were a bit of a sort of clique. And so she didn't feel welcomed into the cast. And she said, we must always make sure that everybody who comes into our cast is felt welcomed. I said, yes, sure, good idea, fine. So every time anybody came in, run up some big hard knocking them for six. So anyway, that didn't stand me in very good stead. I got a bit of a reputation for being somebody who was something other than I was, because I went up hugging everybody all the time. Anyway, so I thought that was lovely of her to make sure that we did that. And we did, we welcomed everybody and try and make them feel part of the gang straight away, because we were such a strong, tight group. It could have appeared like that.
So William Russell too. I mean, the four of you with William Russell as well.
Russ was gorgeous because I had mad crush on him because he was super duper gorgeous. He really was. Lovely guy. And I wasn't 16, but I mean, I was much younger in those days and susceptible to a gorgeous guy, and he was very, very gorgeous. We all liked each other very much, bounced off each other very much. And I think it came across looking at them, I still see them occasionally now. And it seems, I think, that we're quite a smooth, tightly knit group.
Yeah.
What do you think when you watch them?
Oh,
Yeah?
I think the four just seem so close. I guess that's why the sadness of when you leave. Because I mean, you had that beautiful ending at the end of the Dalek invasion of Earth.
That was
But
beautifully written, wasn't it?
it's just beautiful, and it still always brings me to tears. It's such a powerful
Me too,
moment.
actually. Sometimes we're invited to go along to a showing of some episode or other, and if it's that one, I have to take my tissues with me. It's a very emotional scene, and because as that was my swan song anyway, it was my last episode. It had a double meaning, that I was leaving my grandfather and I was leaving my grandpa. No, it was a very sad thing to leave them. I mean, I wanted to go earlier than that because I felt it was being repetitious and wasn't offering me what they had suggested that my part would be full of the most extraordinary elements. That she was going to be physically amazing, mentally amazing, super, super intelligent, and just extraordinary in every way. And I really look forward to doing it. Unfortunately, the part wasn't written like that at all. I mean, I tried to get some of that into the pilot, and I was told off by Sydney Newman, because his concept of it was that she should be the girl next door and that I should be the eyes of the young viewer watching it and experiencing what they would have been experiencing. And it worked, actually. I know I could see now that it worked. And also I can see that if I had been, for instance, telepathic, then when I was captured inevitably as I was by some monster or other or some baddie, I could just go, grandfather, come and get me. End of story. Wouldn't have been a very interesting story. So it was essential that I got into trouble, which I did all the time. So I see it, looking back, I see it, but at the time it just got too repetitive for me. And I wanted to do something different.
Just over 10 years ago, there was a docudrama released, An Adventure in Time and Space. You had a little role in that.
Yeah,
Do you
very
think
little. Right?
do you think that was an accurate depiction of the time, or was there some dramatic
It
license?
was. It was. Well, I mean, I know Mark Gatiss took a great deal of trouble and time to make sure that he did get everything accurate. And I'm happy to say that he asked me lots and lots of questions over a very lovely meal at the Ivy, which I don't know if you know the Ivy. It's a very famous restaurant. I think it's like your Sardi's, that sort of thing. And he took
Yep.
me to a wonderful lunch there and talked and talked and talked about everything, wanted to know all sorts of things. And I believe he did this with a few other people too. I wasn't singled out. But I was very fond of Mark, very fond of him, until he wrote me that soppy little part in. I was hoping that he was going to write me something funny. Like, I mean, in my imagination, which is a bit loopy anyway, I have a very strange imagination. I imagine myself perhaps being a dinner lady and serving um, something like fish fingers and custard, you know, to the actors. And no, that wasn't to be, unfortunately.
Maybe still, it must have happened. So, 20 years after you left the role, 20 years after you started, you came back for the Five Doctors. What was it like coming back into the role 19 years after you left it?
Well, I very nearly didn't do it, not because I was putting my foot down about doing anything to do with Doctor Who again. It's just that when they sent me the script, they you would not believe this. They had me calling my grandfather Doctor, and I just got in touch with them and said, "Sorry, I can't do this, can I? You've got me calling my grandfather Doctor. I never called him Doctor." And you would not believe the answer they gave me. I mean, all this has gone out of the window now because Doctor Who is completely different. But at that time, they did want him to remain a grandfatherly, rather mysterious figure. And you see, what they put to me was that if I was to call him grandfather, it would suggest that he had in fact been married and had children, and to have had children, oh dear, he had to have sex. And the idea of a sexy doctor was just not on. I mean, now, of course, doctors are very sexy, but I mean, I nearly dropped the phone. I thought it was so hysterically funny. Anyway, I said, okay, but on this occasion, you've got to let me call him grandfather, otherwise, I'm not going to do it. So they changed it.
Yeah, it's a good thing too. So
Yeah, I'm
20,
glad I'm glad you did that.
Thank you.
so 20 years after that, we're finally getting to Big Finish, which we want to talk about your audio stories. So
Yeah.
finally, you come and join Big Finish with in the Unbound series.
Oh, happy
Um,
day, happy day.
so how did you get involved with Big Finish? How did that happen?
Well, they just got in touch with me and asked me to do it for them.
So I mean, in terms of your working with Jeffrey Bolden, did they talk to you about the storyline at all?
I had nothing to do with the script at all. I was trying to be a very good girl and not rock the boat.
Did you keep not rocking the boat?
I've been known to give an opinion about things, but nobody's ever told me to just go in a corner and shut up. So
That's
we all get
good.
on very well at Big Finish anyway. Big Finish is wonderful to work with. I mean, I know I'm not the only person to say that it is absolutely a joy, especially when I'm working with Lisa Bowerman. I adore
Yeah.
Lisa. Yeah.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. Doctor Who: The Lost Stories. The First Doctor box set.
You stopped. Stopped. And I think I know where we are.
Where?
In Babylon.
And so this must be...
The Hanging Gardens of Babylon.
One of the 7 ancient wonders of the world.
Barbara clapped her hands together in delight. I knew it! I knew you were Alexander the Great, she exclaimed.
I am not that tall.
No, history knows you as Alexander the Great.
Test of truth as practiced in Macedon. You will walk the fire.
Walk over fire? Grandfather, you can't!
I will kill you for that, stranger. I will break your bones into sand.
Treachery, Miss Wright. Treachery.
Contestants, you will start when I drop my arm. Let your muscles taste every drop of strength in your body.
Come on, Ian! Knock him out!
Then that means the year is 323 BC.
What has Alexander to fear? 2 women, an old man, and a scientist? And I tell you that it was patricide, Hephaestion. It was worse than murder.
Now, just a second, child. Oh, very well then. We'll all die together. There, young man. Does that satisfy you now?
So you did some Unbound stories, which were very much a different take on Susan, probably a bit more like you originally sold. Then you came back and did some Companion Chronicles and some Lost Stories. So going back to playing the Susan from the TV show. And then you come back later with Paul McGann and did a whole series, very different there. They've used your character an awful lot in different ways. Do you know, what have you enjoyed most about what they've been doing with your character?
Exactly what you said, that they use her in a lot of different ways. Yeah. I love the way they write for Susan in Big Finish. I really do. I get to do all the sorts of things that I would love to have done in the original Susan. Of course, they allow me to grow old, which is a wonderful thing. So I get to have more authority and get to do lots of fun things in it.
I mean, your stories with Paul McGann have been very strong because you yourself had a son in that story, played by Paul McGann's own son.
Yes, yeah.
You really be able to stretch Susan to very strong emotional takes, and in fact, losing your son ultimately, and joining the Time War. Have you got plans? Are you hoping there'll be more things that they'll be doing with Susan down the track?
They're always promising me more. So yes.
Excellent. What's it like working audio? How's audio different to work as a medium in terms of to theatre or to television?
It just allows you to stretch more because you're not bound by how old you look, or how you look. I mean, I could be playing a monster, and they could turn Susan for some reason into a monster. She could be not reborn. What do you call it when they come back again?
Regenerate.
Regenerate. She could be regenerated into a monster or something. I mean, there's no end to what they can do, and that's why I love it, because I'm always excited to get the script, because it's always going to be something really amazing and something that's going to stretch me as an actor.
I mean, the last big box set you did was called Susan's War, where you actually were the lead for the whole box set. A very different day when they'd be able to make Susan into the lead of the whole show, isn't it?
All actors like to be the leads. Nobody will argue with that.
Actually, could I just ask one question about a project that was pre Big Finish, but it was kind of a Doctor Who project. It was a Sontaran. I don't know if you remember. It was all filmed on a ship.
Yes.
That was called Shakedown.
Brilliant. Shakedown, loved it.
You had an amazing role in that because it was so different to Susan. It had
so
all Doctor
different.
Who.
That's why I loved it.
Yeah. Tell us what else you remember about that production.
Well, it wasn't the easiest of things to do because it was on location on a battleship that was moored beside the Tower of London on the Thames. And because it's called the Belfast, and it's a very popular tourist destination. And the thing is that all our filming was done below decks, and it was in sort of like the engine area of the ship, because it made a remarkably good place to present a spaceship. It looked fantastic. Well, I think you agree. It was just extraordinary. But the problem is that we had the tourists coming above us on the decks, and they'd lift up this this thing which stopped them from coming downstairs to join us in the film. But they would speak quite loudly sometimes, and you could hear them saying, "Hey, look, there's something going on down here," or they'd be talking about Tower Bridge or what they'd seen recently in London, and all this would come through. And not only that, um, I'm afraid that whenever they went to the loo and flushed the loo, we had to stop filming because we could hear the flushing because the pipes came down there. So we had to stop whenever anybody went to the loo. And also, beside us in the water, they had these tourist boats where they had a narration of what they were seeing. And so you'd have this klaxon, this, "All right, ladies and gentlemen, on your right, you'll see the HMS Belfast. And we can't be too loud because I think they're doing some filming at the moment." And we shout, "Yes, we also shut up." But it was not very peaceful, but it was great fun.
Yeah, the role you were playing, a real arrogant so and
Oh, she
so.
was bitch. Yeah, she was
Yeah,
bitch.
and then you ended up
Oh,
getting possessed and taken over. So there was another twist to your
I
character as well.
got
I
my
think
desserts. Yeah.
most of the crew got possessed in that story.
And I got blindingly drunk in it too, which was marvelous.
Oh,
I
that's right.
got
Yeah, I
blindingly
remember.
drunk in that, which was lovely. We always like to play drunks. And I had a fantastic costume made for me. It was a
You
sort
did.
of figure hugging, sort of shiny green thing that I wore. And I had fantastic trainers which had wedges about that high. And it was just such fun. The whole thing was great fun. And lovely working, of course, with Sophie, lovely Sophie. And it was such good fun. And of course, Kevin Davis, the director, he's become a very good friend since we did it. And he's such a lovely guy and such a wonderful guy to work with, such a good director. And his vision, I think it was way ahead of its time. Do you agree? I think it was way ahead of its time. And we had some we these what are they called?
Well, virtual reality was it?
Virtual reality. Thank you. So we had this sequence where we were supposed to be climbing up the rigging on this boat, and with the help of the 3D glasses, we could actually perform. I can't describe how it was. It was very strange, but that was way ahead of its time, and it was just such a joy to work on. It was such good fun.
Excellent.
You spent a lot of time catching up with different people across the eras now in terms of companions and doctors at conventions. Um, what are the highlights? Some of the highlights for you at going to a convention and catching up with people who've taken the role over and over again for years after you.
Well, it's fascinating for me, of course, to meet the current companions, whoever they are. I'm always dead jealous of them because they're always doing far more exciting things than I ever did on it. But also, it's become like a family. I mean, you meet each other on the conventions again and again and again, and we all get very fond of each other. We have a great love in, and just swapping our experiences on the various Doctor Who's that we've done, and with the various Doctor Who's we've been in. And it just, for me, it extends the Doctor Who experience. It doesn't leave me. It's all around me all the time. So it's great fun. I love it.
Well, Carole Ann, for more than 60 years, you've been bringing joy to Doctor Who fans, and no doubt for another 60 years and beyond, people will continue
Oh
to.
God.
Well, no, because I mean you're immortalized, and I know you have a great and huge CV of amazing work. A lot of it doesn't exist anymore, sadly, and even some of your Doctor Who work doesn't
Sad.
exist anymore. But you have been immortalized into a history, and your picture still keeps appearing in Doctor Who in modern days and shows, and you had a huge reference in last week's Doctor Who show. I'm not sure a couple of weeks ago they were talking about Susan and your role you play in the show. So I think for many, many decades to come, you'll continue to bring much joy to fans. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you.
From Big Finish Productions, Susan's War.
Ian!
Susan!
Welcome to Gallifrey, Ian Chesterton.
Welcome back to the Sense Sphere, Susan and Ian. I am Second Elder.
The Daleks greet you! We require materials for repairs.
May I request that you speak less loudly?
We will comply.
What is it?
There's something on the screen.
A lot of somethings. In attack formation.
The invasion.
Charge!
They're charging at the attack ship!
Maybe it's best to get it over quickly.
Line 1, fire!
Ogrons! In headsets!
Robotized Ogrons!
They're Robo-Grons.
What exactly is this weapon we're here to see?
This. Come on!
The alarm!
The Orviks! They're loose. They've got out. They're loose in the command compound.
Can't prevent the war.
Why not? You helped bring it about.
I did not.
But in the Earth year 1963.
How about you get out of my way?
A time ring?
Grandfather!
Well, he's grandfather now.
I always was. Will you stop dithering and send the message, child?
Goodness!
Outside, we've got renegade Dalek rockers. Inside, Dalek mods from the Time War.
Big Finish. We love stories.
No!
Exterminate!
Well, that certainly was a treat, Philip, being the first podcast interview that Carole Ann Ford has ever done. Happens to be with us. Two little blokes from Australia. Good
Yes,
stuff.
I think it's because we're from Australia. She did, I did have the heart to tell her that most of our audience is in the UK and America.
No, I didn't dare tell her either.
But so all our UK and American listeners, thanks guys. Sorry I didn't mention you.
Thank you.
But thank you that you're there. But yes, no, it was just a joy being able to listen to her. That was lots of fun.
Yeah. And if there's still no clues on the current TV series as to whether Susan's going to appear or not, well, you'll just have to wait and see if there is a Susan twist in the end. Yes. All right. So, Philip, let's talk about what we've been listening to over the last little while and what I've been listening to. Hang on. I just spotted my list over there, and the list still says it's your turn. So I would not dare go against the list.
Even after 200 episodes, it's still my turn first.
Yes.
Gosh,
No change there.
I have been listening to some Torchwood. I've
cool.
been doing a bit of a burn on all the stuff written by Gareth David Lloyd. So there's been 3 stories written by Gareth David Lloyd and him starring as Yanto Jones in it. So it started with Tube Strike, which is also in the London Underground with the Weevils, and it's pretty horror and gory and heads being ripped off and all that sort of stuff. But
lovely.
It's a bit of fun.
Especially on audio.
Then there's Missing Molly, which is a girl who disappeared 13, 15 years earlier, comes back as a young adult, but still with no memories of what's happened in those intervening years, and is basically still sort of a child, but but she's in an adult body now, but wearing the same clothes, but there's fitter and things. And Yanto is trying to stop Torchwood from basically dissecting her, I guess. He's worried about what would happen to her. So it's early in... Tube Strike is while he's still Torchwood 1. This one is now when he's early days. So his girlfriend's recently been shot to death by the Torchwood staff because she was a cyberwoman. And this one, so he's still nervous about Torchwood and what they might do. And so he's trying to fix the problem himself. This is a beautiful four-hander. It is so emotionally wrought. It is powerful. And towards the end, I had tears. And it really got me in the feels. It's really powerful. And then his other ones that's come out now is Torchwood Disco. And that's actually linked with Torchwood 1 that's also come out, which I haven't listened to yet. So can I just say...
That's I Hate Mondays? The
I
Torchwood
Hate
one?
Mondays. It's the Torchwood 111. But yeah, Gareth David Lloyd is doing an amazing acting job. He's really, he's wonderful as Yanto. he really has pushed himself with both writing these stories and acting in them, and they're all very different stories. I think you would enjoy them all. So that's
I
what
haven't
I've been
heard them
listening to.
yet, but I always find Yanto to be the character that I can emotionally connect to the most. In everything I've heard Yanto in the Torchwood audio range, yeah, you get that, you feel real close to him, eh? And you do have a tendency to go on the journeys with him.
I think Yanto's the nicest one out of all of them. The rest all have so much baggage, and they're not real people, but they just have got moments you just don't like. And probably PC. Oh, I can't think of his name.
Andy?
What's it? Andy. Andy's the other nice character, but in some ways he's a bit too nice, a bit thick. Yanto, I think, is the most easy to relate to in terms of he's smart, he's intelligent, he's a bit naive and a bit gullible, but he's just a nice guy. And so you tend to go on the ride with him, I think, easier than all the other characters who, a lot of them have a very, bit of a dark side in there. So yeah, that's what I'm listening to. I mean, I love a bit of Torchwood. What are you listening to, Dwayne?
Well, I mentioned it in our interview, but I've been listening to the audio release of the soundtrack to The Edge of Destruction. So I'm going to recommend that as something that I've been listening to over the last day or so. I never got quite into the audio soundtracks that are existed on DVD, but there is something different about the experience in those. And that, we've talked in the past about my love of the LP version of Genesis of the Daleks. It turns it into a completely different story. And I think The Edge of Destruction lends itself to audio because it's such a confined space for those whole 2 episodes. And Carole Ann Ford's narration for it is really good. What I like about this release is that she's done a little prologue of narration, so it doesn't just go straight into the story. She talks about the events of an unearthly child in a way that doesn't refer to an unearthly child, if you know what I mean, for the obvious copyright reasons. That she talks about the Dalek adventure as well, and then it goes into the story. And there's a great little interview at the end of it as well, where she talks about some of what she touched on with us here today, talks about the rehearsal process in Lime Grove and some of the other studios that they went to, Riverside and a couple of others, which is really nice. So I would definitely recommend this one because of the type of setting that it is. I think I mentioned recently on another episode that I found the Massacre audio hard to listen to because there was not much talking. Well, because of what The Edge of Destruction is, it's all talking. So with just little bits and pieces of narration in between, makes it come alive in a different kind of a way. So I really recommend this one.
Brilliant. Was it actually released on a vinyl? Is this why it's been released as a vinyl, or it has actually just been released as an audio?
I think it might be one of the vinyl ones actually, but I saw it on Audible, so I got it there.
Okay, I mean, I've seen the cover. The cover looks spectacular, but
it is a great cover, really good.
I mean, that on a piece of vinyl would just be astounding.
No, I think it was just audio actually, because the producer is Michael Stevens, and he looks after BBC Audio, whereas the vinyl is done by a different group. I think it's Demon Music or something like that.
Okay, well, there you go.
I think. Yeah.
Well, very interesting cover they've done.
Yes, it's excellent. All right, that'll do us for this installment of the Sirens of Audio. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed it too, Philip.
I did, very much so. Still on a high. Wonderful talking to Carole.
Yeah, it's great being in her company, and it's always, as always, it's great being in your company too, Philip.
Yours as well, Dwayne.
And don't forget, grab your tickets to our events coming up in September. You'll find them at sirensofaudio.com. There'll be links on the page. Go and make sure you get your tickets because there is limited seating, and we don't want anyone to miss out.
Indeed.
Catch you all next time.
Bye, everyone.
You've been listening to The Sirens of Audio, an unearthly podcast with our very special guest, Carole Ann Ford, and your hosts, Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Theme music by Joe Kramer. Check out our live event details and all other info on the podcast at sirensofaudio.com. Got some feedback? Send your email to sirensofaudio@gmail.com or DM us at any of our socials. Our handle is @AudioSirens. Thanks for listening, audiophiles. We'll hear you next time.